Shalom, all Jews looking for the truth and reality. If we had grown up in the homes of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, we would be living a completely different reality. We wouldn't need the entire Torah and all the years of exile where the smartest minds and intellects and the holiest spiritual people have basically process the information, the chokhmah that's in the Torah, so that we, at this point, 5,786, could understand basically what we should have understood this whole time if we had grown up in the homes of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So, in our world today, the year 5,786, 2025, after all the experiences that you and I have gone through just recently, just in the last 5 years, we should be coming to some sort of understanding that perhaps we didn't understand reality quite as well as we thought we did. For example, if we were all just homeschooled, we would understand how to make sourdough bread, for example, would just be normal. Right now, we have to stop and ask ourselves, wait a minute, what did they do before they had yeast to buy at the store, if we're even making our own bread at this point? But we would say, what did they do back in the day when there wasn't a yeast, dried yeast, and how did they make their bread? And they say, oh, okay, it was sourdough. Oh, okay, well, sourdough is good for your gut. So we're like, wait a minute, why does everyone have gluten allergies now? And what is even bread? Why does the Torah talk about bread so much? Okay, so I'm just using this as an example, but it happens to be that lechem is very important in Judaism, and it means a lot of things that we can know, which we would have just automatically have known if we had grown up with our proper Jewish information. So again, going back to the example of sourdough bread, now we have to contemplate that and understand and try to make our own sourdough bread. And many things it's very difficult. It's not easy to make your own sourdough bread. Especially if you don't have good flour, especially if you have bad water, which we do. And who even knows what is going on, how to factor in the frequencies like the 5G and the microwaves and all these things that affect living organisms on a cellular level. So, and so many other things. So again, now when we attempt to do something that should have been just part of our natural understanding of how to live by making our own bread and so forth in a healthy way, that now we have to spend a lot of time and effort to try to relearn this skill, and even to understand how important it is to have a connection with the food and to understand how everything is interacting in reality, different life forces. So these are all things that we would have naturally just hopefully understood and known about if we were brought up with this understanding. And so too it is with Judaism. If we were brought up understanding our role in reality, understanding how to interact with reality properly with the spiritual information that is our inheritance. So this full understanding of how to live properly in our reality would have just been normal for us to do. We would have just known and understood about the evil forces and how to protect ourselves from them and how to focus on God and how to live properly integrated with creation in a way that's harmonious. But since we did not grow up with this understanding, Moshe Rabbeinu gave us the Torah. The Torah is for the nation to basically get back to this way of living and understanding that we would just naturally have had if someone in our history hadn't broken the chain. So that's what the unbroken chain is. It's about the tradition. It's about the masoret. It's about this understanding of how to live in our reality. So when we look at learning Torah, a lot of times it's just fragmented. It's just like we're learning this, we're learning that, we're learning that. we're doing this and doing that. And not only is there very little understanding as to why we are doing anything, because we see right now a lot of people don't know why they're doing anything, and therefore they're not doing it properly, and therefore they're not getting the benefit. For example, the issue of the chazan, and the issue of the times when you pray. There are certain times, like if we understood the flow of time properly, that we would just have known. If we lived with Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, we would have gotten up at a certain time. We would have prayed at a certain time, because that's the time of chesed. That's in the morning. That's the time that we understand how to bring down the shefa, how to bring down the abundance of the life-giving force, so that our world would be alive and we would all be interacting with it in a harmonious and peaceful way. But because there's no understanding and people just pray whenever they want to pray, if they pray at all. So at this point, I'm actually even just talking about the so-called ultra-Orthodox that are doing things by rote habit for the most part, and that's what we see. I'm not doing lashon hara. I'm explaining something that I am seeing in my reality, and I'm offering the explanation, because I ponder these things all the time. This is how I got to be an ultra Orthodox Jew and live in a ghetto with people who are not necessarily learning Torah and understanding what they're doing. And this is something that Isaiah even brings to us and tells us that, and many other prophets say that at a certain point, it's like, God doesn't need us to bring sacrifices. God doesn't need us to do. It's for us to understand what we're doing, and we also have a role to play in this reality as the holy nation, a nation of Kohanim, a nation of priests and prophets. So, it should be clear to everybody at this point that since there is very little understanding, and half the nation, if not more, doesn't even do anything, because they didn't get the proper information to build their understanding of reality on, we're not being effective in bringing down that shefa, that abundance and life force energy from God into our physical reality. And the less and less that's happening, the worse and worse our actual physical reality is getting. So we can understand everything. It's an effort to go from living a certain way with a certain understanding and completely reevaluating everything. But this is the whole purpose of the information in the Torah, the learning Torah and practicing Judaism and understanding everything that we're doing. So again, in reality, we see a lot of people not necessarily understanding what they're doing, okay? And not necessarily even learning the Torah. So we have to now understand that each one of us is responsible for our own part in our reality. So constantly learning the Torah will eventually awaken your own mind. You will start to think about these things. You will start to get on the proper flow of time. There's a time that's flowing daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. And living like a Jew will help to recalibrate you. Living by these laws, understanding and learning the Torah, practicing Judaism will help you understand reality. So that's something I want to explain. That the point of learning Torah isn't just so you know Torah, like, oh, now I know Torah, I know the story. The point is so that you can get back to that same level that you would have had if we had gotten the proper Masorah, if we'd gotten the proper tradition, if we knew how to live in our reality with all of the information about how reality was created. We would have just known this. It wouldn't have been so hard if we had just grown up like this with this information. But since we didn't, this is the lifeline. This is the guide back. This is the straight and narrow paths that will lead you back to this higher level of consciousness, where we're not being led around like a bunch of sheeple from crisis to crisis, trauma to trauma, trying to always figure out what's going on. And as we are getting closer to the end of time, we are in the footsteps of the Mashiach, and more things will continue to happen. So understand now. Get on the right time now and understand where all of this is going. These are the footsteps of the Mashiach that we can learn and understand what that means. The Mashiach will come to be a king over a free nation, not a nation of mental slaves and sheeple.